Okay, welcome to the Manhattan City Commission meeting for Tuesday, June 1st, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, since this is the first meeting of the month, we have open public comments. Anyone can make a public comment on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. So is there anyone here that wishes to make a public comment on an item that is not on the agenda for tonight? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to commissioner comments.
Thank you. I did want to say, I hope everybody had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I think there was a lot of traveling going on. And also, in the rain, we had the pool open for a little bit of time, but not too long. But I did want to say some of the things about pool temperatures and when they're open and when they're not. And Ron can correct me in the places that I'm incorrect. I'm sure there's plenty of that here. I think if it's sunny and 70 degrees, pools are open. 75 and cloudy, pools are open. And I think the water temperature has to be, is it 60 degrees? Higher than 60 degrees for pools to be open. We were hoping to have them open this weekend. That didn't happen. I know families and children are very eager to go and swim in our pools. The splash park is open, so go ahead and take advantage of that during this time. But hopefully we get everybody into the pools as soon as possible. With that, thank you for being here this evening.
The City of Manhattan and several commissioners are partners with the university in something called the International Town and Gown Association, and we have a local group that meets. And so there was a national conference on Zoom, and that was my first national conference. I may not do another one. It's just really clunky. But it's an opportunity to share with and to learn from other communities and other universities about what they have done during COVID. And I guess one of the takeaways that I got was to don't forget to talk to the students in your university and in your town. And some of the students on this conference call said that. So I'm bringing it back to all of us so that as we proceed, we are careful to work with the students in our communities. And that's all. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, I wanted to congratulate Parks and Rec for making certain that the pools got open, and also the 35 folks that showed up Saturday for 2 hours. I think they get a Polar Bear Club award or something for jumping in the water because it was quite chilly. And the other thing of note, yesterday again, Parks and Rec, Frank Trace and the city band had the first performance out in the park, and it was also the 100 years of the band. The band having been started in 1920, so quite a milestone event. And there were also some hardy souls that braved the weather that were out there. It was a pretty good crowd. So a great concert last night. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the City Commission. The Commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda. Does the Commission have any questions or comments on any of the consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, are there any public comments on the consent agenda items? Okay, seeing none, I guess we can move right on to a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as distributed.
Second.
Okay, City Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mayor Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the South Project Area Redevelopment Project Plan and Special Bond Project Plan for the Manhattan Downtown Redevelopment District. And Jason Hilgers, Deputy City Manager, will take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This evening, we have a redevelopment plan amendment, as you mentioned in the agenda item, that'll really look at the South redevelopment area. This is an area bounded by Pierre Street on the north, 4th Street on the west, and Tuttle Creek Boulevard, or Fort Riley Boulevard, sorry, on the south and on the east. This is an area where our Discovery Center, our Hilton Garden Inn, our Conference Center, and Candlewood Inn and Suites and Holiday Inn Express are all located, along with our mixed-use building and an apartment building. Actually, the Fairfield and the other corner building escapes me right now. Is it IDEA? Anyway, that building is also included. So the amendment is pretty focused on allowing another use. So we have an additional building, the Museum of Art and Light, which will be presented on by the applicant this evening. But I just want to give you a little bit of background, let you know where we're at with respect to STAR bonds. So we issued $50 million in STAR bonds in 2009. That primarily was for the construction of the Discovery Center, acquiring land, building half of the parking garage, the Blue Earth Park, and some south infrastructure. Those bonds will be paid off this year. If you recall, back in 2018, we actually approached you with a different STAR bond proposal off Kimball Avenue to construct a museum in adjacency to K-State Athletics, K-State Foundation, and it was in reference to the Bill Snyder type of museum. You all did approve that. We expanded the district and we looked at that concept. We obviously didn't move forward with that project. The Secretary of Commerce ended up not supporting that fully, so it ended up coming off the table. But it would have done essentially the same thing. The life of the district runs through 2026. So we can capture revenues through the end of 26, even into the first couple of months of 27 before it expires. So there's always been this potential for 5.5 years of revenue that could somehow be held within our community and spent and dedicated towards a qualifying project. STAR bonds are supported by state sales tax generated from both the north end and the south end. State sales tax, that's 6.5% that the state collects from all the businesses on the north and south. We dedicate our local sales tax, our 1%, and our portion of the county sales tax just on the south area. Our northern sales tax go towards our TIF bonds. The southern sales for the local only stay within that district for STAR bonds. The state also required us to put in $90,000 a year in transient guest tax. That was when we added the 2 hotels. Instead of a mixed-use type of development, they required we put in the revenue to the equivalent of the $90,000. So since 2006, that annual revenue generated for STAR bonds has ranged anywhere from $5 million a year to $6 million a year. Our portion, that local portion on the south end, has averaged just over $106,820 since 2009. It's fluctuated every year. That transient guest tax, another $90K. So we're looking at just about $200,000 a year that comes from city revenues pledged towards STAR bonds for the next 5.5, 6 years. The city backed those bonds in 2009 with a moral obligation, meaning if revenues didn't materialize and the principal and interest is due, the city would have had to have come up with those revenues at any time between 2009 and 2021. Fortunately, we never had to do that. Future STAR bonds we anticipate issuing if this project moves forward. We do not anticipate a moral obligation on these bonds. That would expire with the existing, and we're looking at issuing something down the road that would not have that moral ob. That anticipation of that $200,000 dedicated through into 26, beginning of 27, would be expected of the city, along with the state's portion as well. We anticipate that issuance could take place in the next 90 to 120 days, if things moved along, and likely structured as a private placement. Garth Herman with Gilmore Bell is here this evening. If you have questions about that, they have experience in these private placements, especially with Star Bonds and other communities in Kansas. But that bondholder really holds the risk. So the applicant would then start working upon your approval and upon the approval of the state of Kansas, would start working with an underwriter, bond counsel, and that potential buyer for that debt. So Bob and Tracy DeBryan are seeking an amendment to the South Project Plan for the addition of their virtual Museum of Art and Light. They're looking for our participation and willingness to allow the development next to the Discovery Center, and they have explored several sites and areas of Manhattan. This has been something they've been working on for about 3 years. The site and just the coordination has been a real challenge. I think they'll expand on that for you this evening. And here we are talking about potentially this facility within the South redevelopment area. We've talked to them about everything from Aggieville to downtown. It's just been a real struggle to find enough space to put this type of facility. Obviously, if you don't control the land, now you're looking at large acquisition costs. If you have to acquire buildings and tear them down, either in Aggieville and downtown, you're going to have real struggles doing that. That's not easy to do. So they're just hurdles after hurdle after hurdle, which really led us to property that the city owns, property that the city already has in the district. You really start to narrow your options. So the planned amendment this evening must be adopted by public hearing and ordinance. So we have scheduled the hearing, obviously, tonight. First and second reading of that ordinance is scheduled for June 1st and the 15th. So we need a supermajority that requires 2/3 of the vote of the commission. 2 dissenting votes would kill it. So it's not a simple majority. So we need 4 out of the 5 to support it, to move it forward. As I mentioned, this will require the Secretary of Commerce to authorize this project. This point in the process, the governing body is being looked at to host a hearing. We noticed everyone within the district, all the tenants, all the owners, all the businesses of the hearing. They're welcome to come this evening and discuss any issues that they may have with this amendment. There's a pre and final development agreement. We did put a draft of the pre-development agreement in your packet this evening, basically highlighting that we have a lot of issues we need to talk about. Everything from the land transfer to zoning, which is a PUD, which you all have been part of PUDs before. They're very detailed. We have existing design guidelines on the south end, so the facility needs to be reviewed from that perspective as well. Infrastructure, we have some challenges. We have some geothermal wells, we have some storm drainage, and we have private utilities all running underneath that parking lot that we're talking about. There'll be a map here shortly, and I apologize for not having that early, but we are talking about that parking area south and east of the Discovery Center between it and the Candlewood Inn and Suites. Future action would also include the city issuing Star Bonds formally, again, structured in a way it doesn't have that moral ob, that future risk, but it would have the dedication of an annual revenue stream that the city would realize if Star Bonds went away, of around $200,000 a year. And then that final design, both above ground and below ground. And that will take some time before we obviously get into the PUD amendment and then eventually into construction potentially. At this point, I was going to turn it over to Mark Abbott, who is legal counsel for the DeBryans. I think he has a short presentation he'd like to run through. If you have questions for me now, I'd be happy to take those, or we can wait till the end. It's up to you, Mayor.
I just want to clarify one of the budget things, because I got questions on that. Now, based on the charts you just showed there, the city would in fact, over 5.5 years, be investing between $1.1 and $1.2 million in the project, because that would be the transient guest tax money and the sales tax money that would go into the city coffers, at the end of this year, if the Star Bonds have been paid off. Is that correct?
It is correct, and it's the same discussion we had with the Snyder type of museum and this one, which I highlighted earlier. You can leverage $23 million of additional Star Bonds, of which you're right, $1 million of it is local money. that could go towards another project. You've got 21 million coming in privately to finance this. So it's leveraging a $44 million investment in our community. And I'll let them expand on this, but they don't have a reliance or an expectation that the city would operate this facility. It would be a public, not-for-profit type of venture. I'm sorry, a private, not-for-profit type of venture that would not be part of the city and its operations.
Yeah, and of course, we wouldn't have captured the 6% of the state sales tax anyway.
Correct.
You know, even when the store bonds are paid off. So I just wanted to, because I got those questions from folks over the week, and I just wanted to be sure
Yep.
it was clear that, you know, when you sift through the 200 pages of documents, it boils down to somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars at worst that the city would be investing in the project, which would be the loss of transit guest tax and sales tax that would have ended up in other city accounts.
Yeah, and that $200,000 has obviously reached the average that it is today over time. When we first started making those debt payments in 2009, 2010, 2011, it wasn't that high. It's obviously grown over time. All that revenue is coming from new development within the community that the state has allowed us and the TIF bonds have been supported by as well to capture over that period of time. You're truly looking at this from a 5-year window. Do you make that investment for 5 more to leverage that additional 43 in private and state money investment? So, any other questions before Mark? All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Is the video, is it in that same folder?
Yeah, I can pull it up when you're ready.
Okay. I'll go through like the first 4. and then-
If it's the same one, we'll just use that. Yep.
Mayor, Commission members, thank you for your time tonight. One thing that I would like to first start off with, my name is Mark Abbott with Polsinelli PC. We are in 900 attorney law firm, 18 different offices. I office out of the Kansas City office. Here on behalf of the development team, Bob and Tracy DeBryan. I'd first like to take a step back and talk about what is the purpose of STAR bonds. You have experience with them. You have a project that is already operating, bonds that are getting ready to pay off. But what is the purpose behind the STAR Bond Act? The purpose of the STAR Bond Act is to draw in visitors who then come and spend money from out of state. So not just capturing the economic activity that would already be present at the location, but we are required to obtain a third-party feasibility study that shows that a certain percentage of the visitors, one, estimates the number of visitors that are projected for a particular project. 2, the number of those visitors that are going to be from outside of a 100-mile radius. And then 3, the number of visitors, what is the percentage of those that are going to be outside of the state of Kansas? The $200,000 number of what the city would be contributing to the project, that is if those funds were to go to the city. Those funds are going to be supplemented, if they are invested in the project, by the sales taxes and the economic activity that occurs as a result of this facility. So just because the city is contributing those funds that they would otherwise receive in their coffers if the bonds were paid off, does not mean that those funds aren't going to be replaced by the new revenue stream from the 75,000 visitors that are going to be coming to our facility. So if I could go through the project, we first start off with just a rendering of the exterior. Again, the development team, Bob and Tracy DeBryan, LK Architecture and the law company have assisted with some of the project renderings, some of the initial project cost estimates, and just figuring out what the scope of the project would be. So here is the Discovery Center. Here is the proposed location for the project. And Jason was accurate. Previously, we have looked at other sites. We have tried to find what space is available within the Star Bond District. That is one of the requirements of the Star Bond Act, is that we be located within the district. Property within the district for a project of this size, a 50,000 square foot facility, is limited. So this is the site that is available to us, the only one that would make it feasible. So what is the project? The project in this case would be a world-class museum. 50,000 square foot facility, all told project costs of construction and donated artwork and endowment in excess of $43 million. Bob and Tracy actually had this idea for a multimedia interactive museum, and then discovered that there was a museum of that type in Paris, and I'm going to butcher the name, but the Atelier des Lumières in Paris. And the next slide will show you exactly what the concept is. The museum will essentially have two different sides. We'll show some interior renderings here in a second. One side being the multimedia interactive displays, the other side being more traditional works of art, of paintings and statues, and what you're accustomed to seeing in art museums. One of the requirements of the state is that the museum be funded by an endowment that, when combined with the net operating revenues, is sufficient to guarantee long-term viability of the facility. That the Secretary of Commerce, one of his big concerns was, is there enough of an endowment to continue operations, or if the state contributes all of these sales tax dollars, is the facility likely to fail? So that is one of the requirements, that it be funded by an endowment, proven up by a third-party revenue study that is sufficient to guarantee long-term viability of the project. So if you want to go ahead and
We'll let this ad play. Unfortunately, I can't skip.
Plunge into Van Gogh's The Starry Night, no matter the time of day. From southern French harbors and fields to scenes from his native Holland, 500 of Vincent van Gogh's works will be lighting up the French capital's Atelier des Lumières in a 10-month exhibition.
Here behind me you can see his paintings of sunflowers. They're like sunlight, and thanks to the digital projection we've highlighted this colour and this subject, which only Van Gogh perfectly mastered.
Seul Van Gogh maîtrisait parfaitement.
The show uses technology developed in 2012 to combine art and music into an immersive experience.
By enlarging it like this, we can see the substance. We see the strokes of the paintbrush, the thickness, that we normally don't get to see.
Another effect of the exhibition's scale, visitors are almost literally drawn into the paintings.
The audience here are actors. They're part of the show. Their shadows play with the images.
An immersive charm that's so far been a hit with the public. The studio's last show, dedicated to Austrian painter Gustav Klimt, drew in well over 1 million visitors.
I'm going to go back and just
2012 to
hold the
combine art
screen on
and
for a
music.
second just so I can highlight something.
By enlarging it like this, we can see the substance. We see the strokes of the paintbrush, the thickness, that we normally don't get to see.
So this is a great example of the vision of the project, that you are not viewing art from a distance. You are not viewing a painting. You are, in fact, immersed in the actual piece of artwork. That there will be discussions of the time period in which the piece was created. There'll be narratives on who the artist was, what was going on in the artist's life, so that you are a part of the presentation of the materials. Today's generation of kids being raised on multimedia, PowerPoint, everyone's kids are better on the computer than they are. This is going to attract a new generation of the public that otherwise wouldn't be attracted to traditional types of museums. And this shows exactly what it would be like to be immersed in the presentation.
Still review that top tab, full screen, down about 3/4.
All right. So this is an artistic rendering of the facility. And so this shows the location to the southeast of the Discovery Center, some exterior renderings. This cross-section shows what I was describing earlier, that this would be the multimedia interactive presentation portion of the facility. These floors would have more traditional works of art. Then there would also be gift shops. There would be space available for painting classes, other types of educational type activities. In working with our architect and contractors, these are the preliminary development costs for the project. That the cost of the land, there's an appraisal that is being obtained. We have not received that appraisal yet, so that is still to be determined. But for the hard costs, soft costs, and then those pieces of equipment that are incorporated into the facility, approximately $23 million within personal property, and then the value of artwork that would be donated, and then also the anticipated amount of the required operations endowment, which would be donated to the facility to guarantee operations. So what are the benefits to the city? The benefits to the city are drawing in more visitors to the city, those that aren't already coming to the city. What project can Manhattan support in order to bring more economic activity to the city? This project would invest in excess of $43 million in the city of Manhattan. There would be guaranteed long-term operations from the endowment. This would be a one-of-a-kind, unique cultural and educational facility, the type that there is no other interactive museum like this in the world, not just in the state, not just in the Midwest, but in the world, except for right now, except for the one in Paris. The De Bryns are willing to, they have had this vision, they have had this dream for several years, and now in the midst of COVID-19, all the economic activity that has slowed down, they're willing to put their funds into this project to benefit the city. It would complement the Discovery Center in kind of building on the educational and cultural aspect that is already present in that area. And then also transforming an underutilized piece of real estate that's owned by the city, that it's serving a purpose right now as surface parking, which is it is a public purpose, but would the city wish to make perhaps better use of the project in generating economic activity and drawing more visitors to the city? So the two requests that would be considered on the 15th, the two requests are amending the existing South Project Area Redevelopment Project Plan to approve this project, and then approval of the pre-development agreement like Jason described. It just sets out, this is generally the primary material terms that would need to be negotiated and then incorporated into a future development agreement. And I am happy to answer any questions anyone may have. Thank you.
I don't know if it's for you or for Jason or who, what is the plan to replace that parking and just have people walk the block and a half over to the parking garage? Because there's no other place, correct, for surface parking?
Yeah, and it's something that, we need to, we had the topic come up before, just how to manage parking down there. We have a few areas that are managed by 3 Hour. It's around the mixed-use building. The parking that is adjacent to the Discovery Center, the parking that is, let me get up some maps. It is free, and it's all day. It's not regulated. The Candlewoods is, part of a benefit district, so it's a public parking lot that's being financed by both the city and the Candlewood. The same with the mixed-use building next to Blue Earth. Didn't even know we're in Manhattan.
And how far into the, it said something about KDOT, where you have to take a little bit of KDOT right away. It looks like the map here just shows the parking lot, period. We're taking more than just the parking lot, correct?
Yeah, so starts to creep into, this area that we're gonna have to approach KDOT about. Normally they'd like to see a 50 feet, away from their right of way. If you recall, when we built Pierre up to the on and off ramp, K177, there's a line that goes through this thing about here, and Britt Tremblay with Banesh behind me could probably tell me more accurately, but this is about the line between KDOT and city. So there is some area of KDOT that we're going to encroach upon. We've started some of those discussions. We feel optimistic. We can work out those details. Westar's got some transformers here. As I mentioned, there's a geothermal well that runs through the middle of this thing. There's storm drainage that takes a very big pipe and dumps it into the river, the Kansas River. So there's some site challenges we'll have to work through. Parking wise, we got a 430 stall parking garage that for the most part fills up with large conferences, large military balls. Other than that, there's not a lot of activity there other than the Friday and Saturday night activity that people would rather not take place in this garage. There's a way to address that, and there's a way to address all the public parking in this area that could be much more enhanced from a parking management standpoint. But this is going to drive some of that. There's roughly 85, 90 stalls in this area. So when the Discovery Center is busy and the Candlewood Inn and Suites is busy, this area is congested with parking. Now, those things don't overlap all the time. The Discovery Center gets its peaks, but you have weekends where you do have some conflicts. So it'll push those 85, 90 folks more than likely onto the street, and we'd like to manage it in a way to get them into the garage.
The tunnel to the depot parking is still available, which would be closer.
Yep.
If they've had the foresight to go there instead,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, if you can navigate getting into the depot and getting out, which usually takes a local history of at least 20 years before you're able to pull that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could. It's a tough site to get to, but yes, we feel like there's ample parking. It may not be directly adjacent, but I think that's one of the better walks in Manhattan, along 3rd Street, along Blue Earth Park, and along our conference center and our hotel. We have a lot of people that go to conferences here, stay in all 4 of these hotels, that walk all the way to Points and enjoy an evening at one of our restaurants or shops and go into the mall. So I have all the confidence in the world to make this destination and to make this destination. It's a lot shorter walk, and it's just a great walk next to a $2 million acre park that we've invested in and our community loves.
Jason, tell me a little bit about, I asked Ron this earlier, it's a TIF district, so does it go until 2027, or does it go beyond that? And what happens after it expires? What happens to that money? My thinking is those property taxes go to city and county, which we are capturing right now.
So the TIF Star District is essentially the same district. This is the area which I described as the southern area is the area that we're talking about tonight. It's bordered by Pierre, Fourth, Fort Riley Boulevard. This is the southern end of our TIF and our STAR district. The northern piece is Leavenworth, TCB, Bluemont, 4th Street. So since 2006, we've had boundaries around both of these areas. We, the city, collect property tax, all property tax, the entire mill levy property tax, with the exception of the 20 that goes to the state that's not TIF eligible. We capture all the incremental property tax. So when that base went in 06, school district, the county, they still get that revenue, as does the city. It's the incremental growth.
Right.
So since 06, we've had growth. It's helped pay off our $17 million in TIF bonds, and it continues to do that. That's property tax. That's our share of the local sales tax generated on the north end. The STAR bonds are supported by the state sales tax generated on both the north and the south end. Our local sales tax support the STAR bonds on the south end. So the TIF/STAR district all have a life through 2026. We talk about revenue streams towards the beginning of 2027. A lot of that is because we get revenues 2 months late, and December 2026 revenues will bleed into 2027. So they'll still come in through February, March, even sometimes April. You'll get them 4 months later. So when we talk about going into 27, it's really more about the revenue streams will continue through the first few months of 27. But the expiration of the district for both TIF and STAR will be 2026 unless we don't renew the STAR bonds. Then the STAR bond district would expire this year.
So my question is, well, that's part of the question, but if they build it there within a time frame before 2026 and it's completed, let's say 2025 or whatever it might be, do we collect the TIF money on that? Is it still in a TIF district? It's still in a
Yes.
TIF district?
Yes.
So we would be collecting that TIF, capturing that TIF revenue?
It will not generate property tax. So the
Oh.
facility they've proposed,
Okay, that's.
yeah, the private not-for-profit, they intend to form an LLC that would be property tax exempt.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that, it was another reason why I didn't necessarily advocate they go take something else off the tax rolls and put this facility in. Great investment, great asset to the community, but if something else is generating, and is valued at 5 or 10, million, and we take that off, that does hurt property tax revenue.
So are they tax exempt forever, or?
Well, these types of facilities have to go through that Board of Tax Appeals, just like any other facility. So, according to the state statutes, the state will determine, and the county will determine whether or not it's tax exempt. They fully anticipate they'll be tax exempt. I don't think they anticipate generating any profit here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So you're saying, that, yeah, currently the parking lot generates no property tax?
Correct.
In the future, it'll generate no property tax?
Correct.
But we will eventually get some sales tax and hopefully increase in other transient guest tax, more people staying, coming and going?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how much they plan to charge. That's a factor. Let's say they charge $10 a head. They do get $75,000. They're going to get $750,000 in revenue. 8.95% of that will be captured. We'll get 1.3 of that. So you can do the math. I mean, there is a return. Now it's where they go to shop. It's where they go to stay the night. It's what else they're doing in town. Having it as an anchor right by our anchor, our catalyst of the Discovery Center, we believe will bring quite an energy to this area and really generate, a 2-for-1 type of deal, possibly even expand into the next day. So if folks are in town doing something and they're going to go to the Discovery Center, they're also going to go to the Art and Light Museum. It's an experience that pretty unique of each other too, that could attract a pretty healthy crowd. Any other technical issues I can answer at this time?
Okay, if there's no other questions on the commission now, we can go ahead, the public hearing. We did have one speaker, James Roberts, who signed up in advance. If you'd like to come forward and speak, you can do so. Is James here? apparently not. He signed up on the sheet here. Is there anyone else that wishes to make a comment in the public hearing?
Hi, my name's Mary Beth Reese. I live at 2008 Ivy Drive. I just have a few questions. Why does a new art museum not go through the Arts and Humanities Board, which I thought would be the procedure for an art museum? And of course, I am very much a fan of the Discovery Center, so it is kind of difficult to understand building it there, so then two museums would have no parking lot. And I understand people will walk, but you know, the mall parking lot is sitting there unused, concrete everywhere. It'd be a much more logical place, I think, possibly to look at, but maybe it's not in the district. Just recognize that this art museum will affect all the other nonprofits in the community, the zoo, the Discovery Center, the beach. So it's a real, you know, it's a wonderful idea, but it comes with, can it really work, you know, really well? And in their information, they always talk about the 75,000 annual visitors. The Discovery Center in 2018 did have 75,000 people come, but only 40,000 were paying customers. They have people come in that are not paying through other different events. So I just wanted to question the process, but I do appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, should I sign in here too? I guess.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Karen Hibbard. I'm the Vice President of the Chamber and the Director of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Manhattan is a destination. Prior to COVID, Manhattan welcomed on an average 350,000 visitors a year to our community. Research conducted in 2016 by Randall Travel Marketing validated the reasons visitors come to Manhattan and the surrounding region. Kansas State University related experiences, football weekends, they come to experience the Flint Hills and to visit family and friends. 38% of our visitors are baby boomers, ranging in ages from 50 to 70, followed by 29% of our visitors in the age range of 22 to 39. What do visitors do during their stay? According to our research, 70% of them dine out. 42% shop, 65% enjoy Kansas State University, and 25% of those visitors visit the Flint Hills Discovery Center. Average visitors spend during their stay, $312 a day. Attractions are a key tool to bring visitors to town. The Flint Hills Discovery Center welcomes about 70,000 visitors yearly through their doors. Those visitors then shop, dine, explore, and spend more time in our community, leaving their dollars behind. The Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce appreciates the vision Bob and Tracy DeBryan have had for our community. Art inspires. Art teaches. Art attracts. Early studies estimate the Art and Light Museum will attract 75,000 visitors yearly, with 27% coming from outside of Kansas. Again, these visitors will leave behind dollars. We're excited about this opportunity to use Star Bond proceeds for a new Manhattan attraction. In addition to its economic impact on our community, we also appreciate the commitment that no additional city funds would be used for the museum operations. This is a double win for Manhattan. Because of this double win scenario for our community, the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors voted to support the city's recommendation action placed before you this evening. The ability to keep a visitor in our community beyond 4 hours increases the opportunity for that visitor to dedicate more time in our community, possibly spending the night and enhancing their average visitor spend. Thank you to Bryans for your love of art and for your love of Manhattan, Kansas. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Monica McFarlane, I'm at 213 Parker Drive. I was really interested in this museum because I don't know if most of you know about it, but KC actually has a visiting exhibit coming through for the Van Gogh light immersion. My husband and I looked at it, and it's in December, it's only the month of December. Every Saturday is sold out. There's limited weekends availability on the Sundays, and during the week, it's already filling up. So I think this is something that a lot of people are very interested in. I think it would be something that could draw a lot of people to the community to look at and be part of. It looks like an amazing thing to walk through and see. And if, you know, we do something and see what it looks like in KC, I'm still gonna try and go somewhere in the week. But if that's something that's here that we can do ourselves, and it's not just a temporary thing, but we can draw that type of crowd here, I think that would be really great for our city. I dropped your sheet, I'm sorry.
Assume I need to put my name and all that in there, so. Good evening, my name is Brad Everett. I'm the GM of the Hilton Garden Inn and part owner of the Fairfield Inn down the district. I'm just gonna put down Hilton, that's fine. You guys know where to find me. Starting off, I wanna thank the DeBryans and Mr. Howell. I think especially Mr. Howell has been a pillar for the community and giving way beyond a lot of our expectations and strengthening Manhattan to the position which it is. So to that, I thank you. I was on the commission at one point and we had the Discovery Center. I know there are those that are passionate about it, and Karen's one of them. Unfortunately, financially, it has not been as successful as we had wished. That's separate. I think this is certainly an opportunity to provide another venue that hopefully would provide some more strength to an attraction and provide a little bit more of interest for Manhattan for visiting guests. The main concern I'm having with the placement is right now we're compressing the parking. We have the parking garage, as Jason pointed out, over 400 parking stalls. I think you're also aware of the convention center. We just expanded 50%, can handle up to 2,100 guests. What do you do? Is it every day that those 2,100 come in? No, they don't, Jason. Do we have a military ball every day? No, we don't. But because of the size, we're getting now the ability to have multiple conventions in that area. We are going to be, by and large, pretty good, but with the guests that are compressing that area and taking up the parking, it's going to go over to Wade's and take up his parking stalls. And the Candlewood, all the parking stalls, they've now been shoved south in front of their door and over to the Holiday Express. Holiday Express is going to have to come over. These guests are going to have to not have the convenience of pulling right up and staying at their hotel. Guests enjoy doing that, especially if it's raining. It's going to be convenient for me, so hopefully, frankly, they'll leave those two hotels and come over to mine, because we're looking to add on another 40 rooms. But being a good neighbor, which I frankly feel that we are down there, I am concerned. I see Colin over there. I do want them to be successful because they are paying property tax. He's got millions of dollars invested down there. And it's easy for us to go ahead and basically shove another piece that was not planned when we were doing that development when I was on the commission, was it, Ron? No. But taking the Star Bonds, and that's something that Jason, God love you, going all the way up to K-State to stretch them up there. That was creative. I appreciate it. But maybe it will work. It will leverage and we'll make lemonade out of it. But I'm really, really concerned for Collins property, which God knows why I'm saying that now, but also the Holiday Express. It really is going to go ahead and force people down to that garage. And when we do have multiple events, and we are coming out, thank God, of COVID, we're not going to have the parking down there. And we're going to be known as a place that we can certainly host them, Karen, but we can't provide the parking. They're going to be up and down Yuma and elsewhere, and we're going to hear about it. So I just think that placement is everything. There is some synergy down there, but I think with the lack of parking and how much, and even staging it during construction, if we're not worried about calling, go for it. But I think right now it's just too much for that little space. And I think my suggestion is going over the viaduct, not over the viaduct, but across the street, and have it right behind AJ's, and have it as something that ends up transitioning us from the downtown district down as you're walking towards the Discovery Center. It'd sort of be catty corner, or across from maybe the Fairfield Inn. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I just don't feel that we've got the parking available once we get that place up and running. But at least want to provide my 2 cents on it. So thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gwen Riffle, owner, developer of the Blue Earth mixed-use building in the South Redevelopment District. The project that's being proposed is an outstanding project. I commend the DeBryans and Phil Howe for bringing this to our community because it's a great asset for the community. With regards to the location, I've been in real estate my entire career, 50 years now, and this particular location, in my view, is not the ideal location for it. A better location would be at our gateway entry into the city, being at 3rd and Pierre at the northwest corner. This was a project when we were working on downtown redevelopment where this particular corner was going to be a key development site for the gateway into the city. And that's what I'm going to remind you of, that we looked at that when we were doing the downtown redevelopment, and that northwest corner was identified as a gateway entry element. When the proposed South Development project came about, the parking garage was presented in the location that it is, at the very south end, adjoining Fort Riley Boulevard. I had approached the City Commission at that time and suggested that it was the wrong location. It should be at the north end. I was told at the time I was too late to make that kind of a suggestion, and here we are living with what was created. If the garage was at the north end, it certainly would have enhanced this kind of proposal that's coming before you now. But that's water under the bridge. So here we are, and we've got a wonderful project that can be brought to the community, but I'm suggesting that there's a better location for it. There's no question with regards to taking 80 plus or minus surface parking spaces out of that particular south end development is going to have an impact on surface parking, on the remaining surface parking lots, being the Candlewood and the Holiday Inn and our mixed-use building. That's undue pressure, and it's going to frankly cause undue harm with regards to the negative impact on those existing businesses. A PUD amendment is supposed to improve the PUD. I view this as not improving the PUD. So I ask you to take a serious look at putting this at a true gateway intersection where the public is going to see this beautiful building and project that it deserves to be, versus putting it in the back of the corner of Blue Earth Park. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Wade Rodina. I own the Rodina's Bakehouse and Rodina's in town. My primary concern here is the location. Okay, the project is unbelievable. Thank you for bringing it to Manhattan. But you know, the first gentleman characterized this as the right spot for it, the only spot for it. This spot is a compromise, and it's not the only spot. Okay, this spot affects the existing businesses that have already invested in the area. I didn't get state money for my business. I put $500,000 of my own. And to screw up the parking, which is not optimal now, is short-sighted. Okay, it is a great building. Why not make sure everyone who drives into town sees it, right? It's hidden where they're proposing it right now. So it's a compromise all the way through. So it's also a great opportunity. So I hope you think really hard about getting this thing out of town, but not in that location. It's the wrong spot. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Colin Noble, and I live at 1641 Anderson Avenue, the big Holiday Inn. I'm the guy, and I have those two hotels, the Comfort Inn and the Holiday Inn Express. And so I've kind of got a very interested party here, because I'm next door to it. But I was with Bob and Tracy a couple of years ago. We went to Paris, and I saw this show there in Paris, and the guys have all praised it, but they're understating it. It is fantastic, and it definitely will be a terrific draw for Manhattan. You may remember 2 or 3 years ago, we had the survey done in Manhattan to see what was, what could be done to help the hotels and so on, and the report came back that said, you don't need any more hotels. You need things to come to town. You need events. You need something for people to come and see and that sort of stuff. And if you look what has happened since, the university has slipped, their numbers have retreated a bit. And things like the big country stampede, which was a huge event for hotels. Absolutely, you could charge what you dreamt of, and they were fighting over the rooms. It was wonderful. And there's nothing that has come close to replacing that. However, this is definitely going to help, because this is something highly unusual. I mean, it's a big lot of money, $46 million or $43 million. It's a huge investment. And you can imagine that if investing that amount of money, it is something super special. The guys have all mentioned that maybe one of the hiccups here is that we've got to look into is the parking. It no doubt will affect that area. Is there a way to offset it or help it? We should look into that a bit more, I think. Other than that, I can tell you guys, this is terrific, and my hat's off to the DeBryans. This is a big deal, and you can't help say thanks to everybody. Well done, the DeBryans. Well done, everybody. It's a wonderful thing. Let's see how we can get it done, but don't forget the parking, particularly at the Candlewood.
It's been a while
while since I've been in this room. I wanted to just say a few things in keeping with what's going on tonight. I can't say anything more than's been already said, but I do want to put my support to the project. It's something that's new and different for Manhattan. Manhattan's done so many things in all ways that you can imagine over the past decade, 20 years. It goes back to when we were here in this room watching some new projects develop. But this business is something new and incredibly nice for Manhattan. It will really, I think, put us on the record of saying this is where we want to be, that we are a town of significance and we want to be known as that. And I think that's the way it will be viewed. It takes a lot of money. The money is apparently going to be there from every standpoint that I can hear. I think the parking business will be a problem. It's a shame that that would be the reason that we reject it. If several members of the commission are going to have to be agreeing to this, that puts it a little bit in jeopardy, I think. But I don't want to be a player. I want Manhattan to be looked upon as an unusual community that has the wherewithal to make it happen, and we've seen the big view and we want to make it to go. I think that could well happen this time. I don't want it to be lost. I want it to take it and go with it. So I think we can find it. If it can't be where it is and the parking becomes a major player, that's the shame of it, because I think something like this will make Manhattan that place that people will come to for the purpose of it. And it's good to be back. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments that anyone would like to make at the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, and I guess the individual that signed up, old James Roberts, is still not in the audience, okay? And we won't get his comment tonight, and at that point, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting. And are there any other commissioner comments or follow-on questions?
I have some comments and questions. One of the reasons for this placing, of course, is for the star bonds. So Jason, is there another area where we can still capture the star bonds other than the specific area that we are discussing tonight?
Well, like we did on Kimball, you can always expand the district. The secretary at the time wanted it contiguous, so that's really a big reason why the museum up on Kimball got denied. There's certain language within the statute that his interpretation was basically it needs to be contiguous. So our district boundaries are those two, north end, south end. Either it's in it or it's contiguous to it, right next to it. There was discussion about going up to the mall. And, you know, I wasn't party to those discussions. I believe the developer and the mall talked about options. You got to understand the land underneath the mall is owned by the city, but it's in us. I think we're in year 70 of a 99-year lease. That has value. I don't know where the mall stands on giving up that land. It would be a three-party agreement that would probably be fairly complex to carve off a piece, sell it back to the developer, compensate the mall, and then the city, obviously, it's the asset as well. So, you know, we haven't all three been in a room to negotiate what the expectations would be. The only conversation I've ever had, and it's when we restructured the last time with the mall, was just, are they interested in buying it? You know, are we interested in selling it? You know, it's the land underneath. It's an asset. It has value today that's far greater than it was in the mid-'80s when they negotiated that deal. And you've got 70-some years, 60-some years left. You know, are we at a point as a community we want to get rid of that as an asset? That's a completely different discussion. But it is part of what the alternative has been suggested tonight, and they explored themselves, and it's complicated. You know, we got into that discussion that led us back down here. I'm not going to sit here and say it's ideal. I always hope we have parking challenges. That means things are successful and things are going. You know, I've sat down with all 4 of those gentlemen, and we've talked about parking on the south end before, about charging at that garage, about managing that parking in a different way. There are challenges, and they're correct. They have times where things are going to bust at the seams. And even in the discussions with the developer, how can we get people from that garage to the Discovery, from that garage to the new Art and Light Museum? There could be different ways. Ward Morgan tried a different way with a golf cart type of transportation. Possibly something like that could be looked into. If we really need those additional stalls somewhere, there's about 1,200 of them around that mall that could be accessed, utilized, and shuttle people back and forth. I would love that problem. I really would. And I think that the area would, if we're busting at the seams, looking for places to park, we do have some adjacencies.
Thank you. That was my only question. I think, you know, upon hearing about the museum, just hearing here and there, I wasn't sure how I would feel about it. And then after having a discussion with the DeBryans, I was in with the concept. I think having not only local and regional artwork, but national and international artwork here in the city of Manhattan. And it's one of those things, as a teacher, you also believe in exposure, exposure, exposure. Our kids are exposed to the prairie, to Johnny Caw, everything Kansas. But this brings in that culture from the world to Manhattan, and that's who we're competing with, is the world. So we need people to recognize Manhattan and bring their businesses here, have their vacations here, and I think this type of project does that. And even if we approve it tonight, with this issue, there are so many caveats to this before it even comes to reality. We also approved the Bill Snyder Museum, and it wasn't a go. The Star Bonds issues did not go very far with that, and we also had a lot of community input for it and against it. I have a lot of friends right now in this hall, which both sides have really good ideas and the reason for doing it and maybe moving to another spot. But the concept is very intriguing. I would like to pursue it. I think having the endowment in place, the private funding that's there, the operational costs being taken care of, and having visitors come and spend their money here, as well as visiting and enjoying Manhattan for the cultural aspect of it. The art, we are always discussing art and how much more art we need in the city of Manhattan. And I think this does that. There is an appetite for art pieces, and just the exhibits and the outlet that it provides for mental health alone. I think the Kansas State University, somebody was saying that it accepts mostly local art or Kansas art. So not like a Van Gogh or something from out of Kansas even onto the university where they can display it. So I think this has lots of positives, so much so that I'm willing to take a risk and move forward with it this evening. And there's so many pieces that need to come together. And if parking is the biggest issue we are talking about, we can address that. We can address the parking issue. But I think that, like Jason was saying, that is a good problem to have. I don't like going to, I used to go to a grocery, I used to go to Dillon's, but then I would go to, I forgot what it was, Food for Less or something over there. And I thought, oh, good, there's so much parking, I'll just go here first. That's not what a business should be having. You shouldn't, that means nobody's going there, therefore there's only 4 cars there. You want it to be packed, you want it to be thriving, you want it to be robust, and you want people to come here because of that. And I think that's what we're going to see, and that's my hope for this community, that we have a robust, vibrant community, and I think this does that. Before anything happens, this is just one of the first pieces to that bigger puzzle. And I really appreciate the private funding that's coming towards this. Millions and millions of dollars are being invested by people that believe in this project, and you don't see that very often. And I would like for us to embrace it and give it a chance and see what happens.
So Jason, I wanted to just clarify a couple things, because one of the one of the comments made tonight was, well, why are we doing this now? Why didn't it go before the Arts Board and all that? And of course, the reason is there's a deadline. I mean, the reason we put it on here for the next couple of meetings is the rules on the star bonds change in July. So maybe we should address that.
They do, and I'll probably have Garth or Mark address those because they're the attorneys. They watch the legislation. Probably more fluent on the 06 version of the star bonds than I am today. So, Garth, if you wouldn't mind, or Mark, you guys could probably address that easier than I.
Because that's important that everybody watching gets the point there is why, it's not like we tried to speed this up just to speed it up. There was a logical reason for doing so.
That's correct, Mayor, Commissioners. Garth Herman with Gilmore and Bell, the city's bond counsel. As you mentioned, the star bond legislation did get some tweaks made to it during this legislative session. Some of those changes go into effect starting July 1st of this year. So part of what the process has been with regards to this project and doing the amendment and going through the process to amend the existing project development plan is so that in essence the old rules that are in place right now, the rules that the city has been abiding by since 2006, 2007, when the Star Bond District and the Star Bond, the original project plan, was created and approved, that those same rules will apply to this new project as well. Now, there are some additional requirements that the state has requested that apply to this project amendment, even though they're not, say, legally required, but just under the abundance of kind of transparency and kind of going along the way towards meeting the spirit of the new law. But that has been part of the discussion with the timing and the process for doing this is so that some of those old laws that are still in effect right now, that those will apply to this project amendment. And that's why we're taking these steps to try to get this done at these two meetings in June, so that basically everything with regards to the project plan process is completed prior to that July 1st.
Okay, that answers that question. Then the other one, Jason, is more, I mean, we're basically making it possible to pursue the star bonds if we vote on this with the state. But we're not formalizing anything else, as in parking, actual architecture of the building, even the location of the building for that matter. That's all still for further discussion, correct?
Very much so. And that pre-development agreement that's in your packet tonight lays out a lot of the areas that we need to work through. There'll be a final development agreement 30, 60 days down the road where we can come together and negotiate some terms and bring those back to you, dealing with the land acquisition. As he mentioned, we're having it appraised. We're looking at it from a value standpoint, just what it's worth. That needs to be factored into the agreement. The zoning clearly does. We've talked about the PUD amendment. It'll look at everything from the building facades to the location, parking impacted. I appreciate Gwen's comment too about where we were when we established this thing. We all, I don't disagree with them. We would have loved to have that garage on the north end of that thing, but where the conference center and the hotel ended up being the biggest user at the time and the driver, it made a lot of sense to have that and leverage that investment too. With that, yes, there's a lot of other issues. There's below grade, as we mentioned, above grade, so there's quite a process to unfold here. Final design on their end, more expense, more investment to get us to that point. They have to go design this thing to get us answers and finalize that in a way that they can actually submit a PUD amendment application. There's a lot of detail that goes along with that. So they'll be preparing that in addition to many other documents.
Okay, so just to focus on the specific vote tonight, which is star bond, we do that. Does that then confine the location of the building to that specific south end somewhere?
This project plan describes the use. It has a general description. What other alternative would there be, Commissioner, that you could think of? I mean, there's a parking lot behind the Hilton that's not ours. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of other space.
I'm thinking in my mind, we're getting ready to build new city shops, and we got some old city shops sitting over on the other side of Fort Riley Boulevard. And I don't know if the building could fit there or not, but that's city property.
And that's, again, back to the Secretary's interpretation that He wants it contiguous. Now, you can expand that district down and go through a process to do that. Be a lot of debate about just that location, but
I'm
contiguous.
just wanting to know if there's any flexibility after we do this tonight. That's really what the question is.
Yeah, we would have to, we'd have to start over. If you're not gonna put it in this area, you'd have to start over with a district boundary expansion, if you're going somewhere else.
Okay, that answers the question, because,
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of things we're not gonna solve tonight. I mean, step one is, if we expand the district, then we can get the Commerce Department to determine whether they're even gonna go with the bonds, and then we have to cross the other Ts after that.
The amendment to the plan will move this down the road.
Okay.
If the amendment fails and we want to look at another site to expand the district or, another amendment, it'll take an additional notification process, and we'll start over. We'll be into August, September, even if we can find a site that works. Everything you think of, short of where we own property, is going to require a negotiation of some sort to buy something, expand that district, and you're looking at 3-4 months minimum.
Okay.
Say there, so the Secretary of Commerce, have they given you any idea when they'll make a decision?
Joe with Gilmore and Bell indicated they thought this month, so within the next week or two, they would have an official letter out to the Bryans.
Okay, all right, you can have a seat. So when I first saw the first YouTube video, it's like, wow, that is something exciting. That will bring people to Manhattan. That is something I'd go to, and drag everybody that came to town to it also, because it really is if it turns out like the Arte de l'Aide, whatever it is in France, we want that in Manhattan. And so I don't that's why I asked the first question about the parking, because obviously that's going to be an issue we've got to try to address, and I don't know, there's no easy solution, or you already would have thought of that, so then we can start having to get a little more creative. But the concern that no one's going to see it is totally unbased, because it's 5 stories tall. It's going to tower over the Discovery Center even. And so when people come across the bridge, they're going to see it. It's not tucked away in some corner hidden where people got to go find it. They're going to find it, and they're going to see it right away. And if it's, I'm not sure exactly which direction that initial screen, it looks like it's probably facing to the west and south there or something. They won't necessarily see that coming over the viaduct, but they'll see it when they're heading on Fort Riley Boulevard. So I like it. I think it'll be a great use of the additional Star Bond funding. We just have to work out some of the details.
My reaction is that I'm delighted that the donors have come forward with a project like this. I'm amazed at it, and that I have asked everybody I know, are you sure there's no real cost to the city? Is this really true? Because most proposals come to us and want 2 or 3 or 5 million in economic development money from our fund. And so this is a real different kind of a proposal. This is an attraction, and that's, I'm sure, what stimulates the Star Bond interest. I don't really want to constrict or cause the Flint Hills Discovery Center to decline, but I don't think it will. I think that these two can work almost different audiences, but it can still work. And I was thinking, when you have another child, you work them into the family and you love them, and that's what I think we're going to do with another art venue here in the community. I think it doesn't detract, doesn't detract from the other art venues we have here. They're not alike, and so I don't see there's some measure of competition, but it isn't huge. And I do, as the city negotiates, I do have some concern about Blue Earth Plaza, and I don't want it turned into a parking lot I want it to be, the integrity of that open space to be respected. And it would be real easy to compromise it, and I hope that's not what happens. I would object to that. But as the city negotiates, it sounds like this is pretty fast track as you negotiate. And so I'd like for us to know before a city commission meeting where it's either up or down, I'd like to know what some of the issues that you discuss or have some options on choices on. But I'm, I think it's a wonderful attraction for our community. I just can't think of any, parking is an issue. Parking is an issue in Aggieville. We're building a parking garage there. We already have one here. When I go to other communities, frequently you have to walk a block or two to get to where you want to go, and downtown Lincoln is what I remember the most recently. And so it's, I don't think it's the end of the world, and I think we'll learn to live with it and we'll adjust. And we might not like it always, but as I get older, I like to park closer. But I also know that there's a reality, and I don't think we can pull off a project like this in less than 30 days at another location. So I'm supportive of tonight's business.
Yeah, when I first saw the project, I was impressed with it. I think, I've seen some of these, I call them holograph sort of displays at other locations, and I think it's a worthwhile draw. My only concern was, I thought originally, there really wouldn't be any city investment, but there's really three things that came up tonight that are a concern that I think are important that we need to resolve. There is basically about a $1.2 million city investment when you look at the amount of tax dollars that we could have put in to our system, and that probably needs to be addressed. Parking, there could be some solutions to that, and also location, which could be, handled by design of the building. There's various ways to address that. And I think the future actions need to address those three things. But what's important to me tonight is, because we have this deadline of July, that we need to move on with the Star Bond process, and I'm committed to that. But all the other details, those are future actions, and I think those three have to be addressed. This city consequence of having to lose 1.2 million, the parking solution and location, and I really appreciate all of you that own businesses there, especially Colin. You seem to, be willing to go along with this, even though it affects your hotel probably more than anyone else. And so that tells me that that's probably a good reason to go ahead and let's move on and get the Star Bond thing through the Department of Commerce, and then we'll see if we can cross some T's and dot some I's on the other issues in the next few weeks.
Two more comments quick. I will trade 1.2 million for 43 million every week if I could. And I realize, and the good thing about the city's investment, it's a one-shot deal. It's not a $400,000 or $500,000 drag every year like the zoo or like the Discovery Center or the millions of dollars a year that Parks and Recreation is a negative drag to the city, because those are things that people want. And so the nice thing about this is it's sort of a one-shot investment by the community to get 40 times our money back there. And the second thing is you're concerned about museum goers or museum goers. If they're going to go to that museum, they're going to that one, and then they're going to go to that one because they're museum goers. I'm not a museum goer much, so one a year is enough for me, but the people that go to museums are going to go to every one that they can put their grubby hands on because that's what they do. And so when they get out of the one, they're going to go into the next one, if not that day, the next day, and then they'll probably realize, hey, these are kind of cool. I bet K-State's got some museums I could go to also. And so we just have to hope that we can start getting charter buses of museum goers to come to town and see all of them, because that's one thing I'm convinced of, that you get them to go to one, they'll go to the other.
I'll try to be a little brief. I think this is the right time and the right place. I I hope with a lot of the right people involved, I think we can make it work. So I'll absolutely support this. And when I saw the presentation initially, I thought of my kids. I thought of how interested they would be in something like that, and how when we've gone to other museums, they've been given packets of information or things to try to get them engaged with the art, where this is flipping that upside down, and the engagement is built into the design, and it is innovative, it is forward thinking, and I think it meets also, for me, it was important to talk about the Star Bonds being an attraction, being something that draws people in. What does that? We talk. There's a lot of different things that draw people to Manhattan. Often it's the university or football or whatever, those things. It's not always art, but there is a special place. And I shared this with the Bryans that my first time ever coming to Manhattan was for that music competition marching band that K-State hosts. And that, coming from Dodge City, that was also one of the first times I ever saw trees and something that was green, let alone Manhattan itself. But I just think about all the missions that our community has been given to look west, look to rural areas, look to places, and be an anchor to inspire other people to come visit. And that is truly, I think, part of the intent of what a Star Bond does. So absolutely, this would fit in that. It's a unique beacon to our region and maybe the United States, at least for a while. So I fully support it, and I'm really happy you guys you took Colin with you to see it in Paris, so he can't be upset about it being next door to him.
Okay, well, on that note, I guess we can entertain a motion here.
Mayor, I move that we approve first reading of an ordinance approving the project plan amendment to the South Project Area Redevelopment Project Plan and Special Bond Project Plan for the Manhattan Downtown Redevelopment District for the Manhattan Museum of Art and Light.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. City Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morse?
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook?
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy?
Yes.
Mayor Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
We'll move on to the general agenda, which we have just one item, and that is to consider proposal and design agreement to develop a concept and feasibility study for an indoor aquatic facility. And Jason, you're back up to bat again.
I am. Thank you, Mayor. About a month ago, the commission received a letter from a aquatics group. This is a group of Manhattan citizens that have formed requesting the city explore an indoor aquatics facility. They've put together a team, Anderson Knight Architects, Councilman Hunsaker, which is an aquatics specialist, and then McCown Gordon Construction. They've outlined a scope and a fee, and they've prepared themselves as a team to deliver that. One component of that is a needs analysis, which will look back. We have a couple different studies, within the last 5-6 years that we can reference, and they have referenced. There are stakeholders throughout the community. We've got a lot of things happening with indoor water. Obviously, you've got K-State and the natatorium no longer operating. You've got Genesis now with 5 lanes that are available. We have a high school swim team that doesn't really have a venue. We have a Manhattan Marlins team that doesn't have an indoor venue. There's a lot of traveling going on right now. So there's an opportunity for some community input, but then they would prepare a concept and site plan based on that feedback. They have mentioned a steering committee. I think Tracy did that in large part because of the 40 to 44 person indoor recreation center committee we had that you all appointed that helped us through a process. If you'd like to do something similar, you can give us that direction. We'll put it out and get some interest and see who'd like to serve, and then you could appoint them at a future time. The indoor, the study continues with an opinion, a probable cost. So they'll look at construction, but they'll also look at a feasibility study. In that probable cost will be design and professional services. So the feasibility study will get more into the revenue and the expense side of things. So this is really where a lot of heartburn may be when it comes to an indoor facility. It's year round, it's water, we got to keep people safe. That requires resources. When you think about our outdoor pools, and we joke around about the 20-some guards, it's true. I mean, you've got a lot of different areas within those outdoor venues to watch. Those indoor venues can be structured and designed in a way where, you know, you're going to have far less guards. I know Tracy swam, and Chad and multiple people in here have swam at the Nat with, you know, 2 or 3 guards watching 3 bodies of water. It can be done if it's designed appropriately, and I think they'll take a shot at that, and that'll impact our expense side of things, but they'll look at those concepts too. So this evening, we're looking for authorization to go ahead and have city staff finalize that professional services contract. They have proposed to do this for $15,000. I think they've given the city a pretty special deal here. Normally, we would pay over $100,000 for this type of work. I do think you're looking at a multi-million type of facility. If it's anywhere near where we were, I can't remember if it's 06 or 07 when we had the ballot question that failed. But since then, we've looked at indoor aquatics a couple more times. It was a top 4 in the strategic facilities improvement plan from the community and the surveys. So there's a lot of interest out there. But we've proposed to fund this from the Special Park and Rec Fund this evening. So with that, be happy to answer any questions. I know you all have had a lot of time to digest that letter and different conversations. So I know I'm here to answer questions. Tracy's here as well with his team, and other members of the aquatic group are in the audience too.
Just to refresh my memory, where does the money for the Special Parks and Rec Fund come from?
It's our third of that special alcohol revenue,
stuff.
yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Jason. I don't have a problem with the $15,000. I think, like you said, it is unusual when you have somebody else putting in $100,000, $120,000 of pro bono to do this, and that means there's a strong belief in this. And the community has often gone back and forth with an indoor aquatic center. I think with an auditorium not being there anymore, I don't know what kind of partnership we can have with Kansas State University. But I think this kind of study, I hope they look into lifeguards, maintenance. Indoor pools require different types of maintenance, humidity, water, all of these things. And one of the things we want to be cautious of is if our community uses it, what would the membership fee look like? Because that's where we need to figure out operational costs. Building a structure is a little bit easier than the operational piece of it, which is ongoing. And one of the things with an auditorium is you can smell the chlorine, and I don't know if that's what it was supposed to be like for an indoor one, but it was just so much. But you can also feel so much moisture that you know it's impacting that infrastructure that's there. So I want to know not just the building cost, like I said, that's going to be the easy part, but the maintenance and the operational costs, and I hope that's what this study does. That's what's going to move this forward to what the community can have and enjoy, not only for 10 years, but 20 years and 30 years down the road. I think there will be questions about, well, you close city, Seco pool, how do we know you can manage this pool? Those are questions it has to address. What kind of lifeguards are we looking at? Is it going to be open just 9 to 5? Is it going to be open on weekends? What do tournaments look like? And do they need different types of, have different types of needs there? Where will it be located? Is it going to be at Seco Park? So all of these things I hope we can get the answers to. And for that kind of study, investing $15,000 seems reasonable, so.
Now, we didn't have anybody sign up for public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this issue? I'm sure Tracy wants to speak. Come on up.
I don't want to speak, but I'll come up to the podium. Tracy Anderson with Andersonite Architects, 2505 Anderson Avenue. see if I can get one more Anderson in there somehow, but, I don't really have anything more to add. You're absolutely right. The study has to address all those things, and that's our full intent to do. We have to know what, when, and how is what I think we have to get to. So I'm happy to stand here and answer any other questions you might have, but beyond what the group of us that spoke about a month ago here said, I don't know that I need to say anything else.
I wanted to ask just a couple of quick things. One, will the feasibility study, because I did get this question from a number of people, include an investigation of possibly covering an existing city pool?
We haven't talked about that, but could we explore that? I think we could reevaluate that. I know Bruce in his study in 2017 looked at least covering a portion of City Park Pool, and that was met with sort of a no-go, but if we
Yeah,
want
and
to
the
reopen
reason
that,
was,
we absolutely can.
you know, as we talked, it looked like a shoebox being put over top of it, and folks
Agreed.
didn't like that, so maybe a different design, but I don't think we should rule that out. I did get an email from, our previous Parks and Rec director who sent it to me to remind me that there were footings there, and that at one point in time, when he was here, long before my time on the commission, that had been considered, so I want to be sure that's at least someplace in this feasibility study.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly address that.
And then the other question was, the group, is there any plans to try to raise some private funds to help build this thing?
We've had conversations with folks like Vern Hendricks, and I think once we know the what and possibly the when is maybe even more important, I think he's willing to go to the public or the private sector and see, are people willing to donate towards this? Nobody's obviously saying anything today, but certainly.
Okay, so that possibility is still there, and then, of course, also partnerships perhaps with the school district to a certain extent, and.
Sure.
And then the other thing that I see, like, as Jason said, this was number 4 on the survey before, but number 1 was the indoor basketball courts, and we built those, so I think this is gonna move up, and it seems to have been on the list for all the strategic planning meetings that we've had. A lot of people, marked it as one of the items they wanted to see happen, so I think it's gonna bubble to the surface, but of course, funding's always gonna be the big issue, and it may get back to a ballot issue on quality of life, whatever. But I think, paying $15,000 for about $100,000 to $120,000 feasibility study is a worthwhile investment, especially since it's, coming out of the Parks and Rec fund there. It's not property tax. We've got the money. Eddie said he could handle it. So if that's the case, I think we should go with it.
I agree with you. I think we've literally addressed the top 3 now. So this is literally up at number 1, in my opinion.
I have a question, more in the when category of how long this feasibility study would explore, I guess, different scenarios where and how that would get to. If in my opinion, the when would be the 2023, 2024 window, this will point us in that direction. It's not going to point us to a 2033 type of scenario, right?
I sure hope not. Yeah. I mean, if you talk to anybody that we've been talking to, the sooner the better. We anticipate the study taking 4 to 5 months, and being able to come back to you with a how, a when, and a what, a when, and a how. I don't know, Jason, I don't want to speak incorrectly here, but
Well, I guess
at that point,
some clarity.
there's going to be, sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's okay.
I mean, the how is, one, how do we build it? Where do those funds come from? And how do we operate it and maintain it over the next 20, 30 plus years? And that all has to be, in my mind, a part of that study so that we can sit here and come to you, or Jason can stand here in front of you and say, here's how we can pay for this thing, and here's how we can run it. So there's going to be lots of discussions we have to have with city staff and others to figure that out.
I think just for the expectations of the community to understand that On one hand, we are talking about a museum that might go up soon. On the other hand, we're talking about a study about a pool that the soonest it could possibly be is somewhere later in 2023 or 2024, if everything was done in a hasty way.
I would say, and again, Jason will correct me if I'm wrong, I would say that's probably accurate. You know, we're probably, even once the facilities or the feasibility study's done, gosh, if you guys turned around and said, let's do it the next day, I mean, there's almost a year worth of design and documentation and then another year worth of construction. So we're already in that time frame. So.
Just stay there, hold on a second. So what is the sort of the target date to get the feasibility study completed? I didn't look through my whole packet tonight.
Well, I think.
This fall?
Yeah.
Maybe?
I mean, if it's 4 to 6 months, and maybe we could shrink that a little bit, but we'd sure like to have it back in front of you by the end of this year at the absolute latest. And so we can try to figure out how we move forward. And, if it gets approved tonight, there's going to be a month of getting contracts in place or whatever. And then if you're going to appoint a steering committee and all of those other things have to happen before we can really get going, so.
I was going to make a comment. You want to talk to him?
Anybody? You go ahead.
Well, I think we should try to partner with K-State, but not with the university, with the foundation. I've heard other people tell me that a lot of these other cities that are kicking our butt, whether it's Ames or Lincoln or Fayetteville, is that their university foundation is investing in their community in a meaningful way that benefits both the community and the college and the students and everything like that. I would call on the K-State Foundation might be a good project if we get to that point, because obviously K-State University would want a place for their students to swim. The university ain't got no money. Foundation's got a pile of money, and I think this would be a great opportunity for them to step up and invest in our community instead of just making more money for themselves all the time. It would be nice to have them make that other investment into our community to help the community and the students and the university and the faculty that likes to swim too. And the other part of my comment would be, we can't just build an indoor aquatics facility for the 100 kids who swim in the marlins and the things and the 50 of you geezers that insist on staying in shape. And so there has to be other things to get Joe Blow into the pool and into the water, because if push comes to shove and we have to put it on a ballot or something to vote on it, you ain't going to win with 275 votes of people who swim a lot. It's going to have to be something a lot of people get excited about, and I'm not sure what that missing link is.
I think a lot of that circles back to the stakeholders groups. And, you talk with the health community, medical, just about all rehab has a potential in water. You got the university students, you've got a lot of different groups out there that we feel like we're part of the discussion. Limitations at the university and the natatorium, just given its age, its location, even the fees associated with it weren't easy to understand, or how you could actually go about doing it. But I do think there's an opportunity to identify all those stakeholders, bring them to the table, and look at what does this thing have to look like in order to gain your interest. I think you're spot on, Commissioner. It's us needing to go out and listen and understand what the community wants and what they're willing to support.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioner. Chad Bunger, 3228 Ella Lane. To piggyback on what Jason just said there, and to your point, our group, although we're made up of mostly parents with kids that like to swim laps and be competitive swimmers, either with the Marlins or the high school or both, we've been truly committed this whole time to try to create an aquatic center that anybody in the city of Manhattan could use, and not just it's a rectangle of water and you have to go make your own fun or figure out your own way for exercise, but truly a facility that meets everybody's needs. And so, yeah, we're all made up of lap swimmers or parents of lap swimmers, but we really want to create a center that's inclusive of everybody. So to that point, that's what we really hope out of this feasibility study, is not just how big of a rectangle it should be, but what other bodies of water, what other features should go in that structure.
Just generally, I certainly want to pursue the feasibility study, because I think there are some answers in there for our questions. We have to better define what we're talking about, because otherwise we're just going to commit a lot of money and not have direction. Having said that, I also am, I'm anxious to get some of these debt projects off of our plate and have some of them actually expire so that we don't just keep adding and adding. So I'm not going to be upset if this doesn't happen in the next year. I mean, we've got to, I'm anxious to get the North Campus corridor out of our way, because it sucks so much money from our resources as a city. We could have had several aquatic centers. And so it's balanced. And so I thought after we got through with the joint maintenance facility, I would just say, now let's wait a little bit, folks. You know, we've got, and I appreciate the covered pool. I know we need it in the community. I want it to be a shared responsibility. So I want K-State, the school district, I even go to the county and ask them for some money. It has to be shared. And don't take first no, or the second no for an answer. Go to somebody else and try to get some cooperation, because this is truly going to be a regional kind of thing. And I also don't think we need a Cadillac. Maybe Cadillacs aren't that desirable, the Mercedes. I think we want something very functional. I would not object to covering the City Park pool or Seco. I'm sure somebody's going to tell us that can't do that, but I know that other communities have built them and they are so proud of them and they are well used, and ours will be too. And so I'm supportive. Certainly the feasibility study, it just depends on the ultimate dollar amount and what the amenities are that are in it, how much they cost, so to be resolved.
Mara, make a motion. I move that we authorize city administration to finalize and the mayor and city clerk to execute an agreement for professional engineering services with Anderson Knight Architects of Manhattan, Kansas, in the amount of $15,000 for an indoor aquatic center.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. City Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes?
Commissioner Estabrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Mayor Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Morse.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and that brings us to the conclusion of the agenda, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you for tuning in tonight.